All right, we're starting the stream in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Executive Exchange Radio with moderator Joe Cristiano, America's corporate exorcist. Hosted by Dr. Jennifer Beeman and George Gutierrez, trusted advisors to chief executives and business leaders across the nation. If you would like to add to the conversation, call 646-652-4620.
Welcome, everyone, to Executive Exchange Radio. I'm your moderator today, Joe Cristiano. And, of course, with us we have the founder of the BMOC Group for Executive Exchange Radio, George Gutierrez, and a guest, Elizabeth Kaiser. She's the CEO of Kaiser Healthcare Consulting. And she's a consultant in the healthcare industry, which I'm very interested to hear more about. Let's see if everyone's on the line. George, can you hear me? Are you there?
Oh, yes, yes, I can. I can hear you very well. I can't wait until we exercise something.
Okay, very good. So we're only going to have your picture up today. We're not going to have you live. Am I correct?
That's correct. I have a very nice-looking picture.
Oh, yeah, the smiley face and all that, and a bow tie. I'm really proud of you. And Elizabeth, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, there you go. Okay, very good. Well, today, Elizabeth, you're going to be the center of attention. How about that? You don't mind being the center of attention, do you?
I can do it for a little while.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Well, you know, when people think of consulting, they think of industry. Very rarely, and I'll include myself in this, do they think of healthcare in consulting, because people today accept healthcare as basically a quasi-government operated enterprise, and you fill out the forms, hopefully, and eventually you get paid a small stipend for what you do, and everyone goes home and everyone's broke. So it's refreshing to hear that someone is actually consulting in that industry, because it does need so much help. Tell us, how did you go from being an attorney, and to a consulting practice in the healthcare industry? That's got to be a fascinating journey.
Yes, it actually is, but there's a lot of similarities, Joe, because of the fact that as an attorney, we're constantly consulting, we're constantly advising, we're constantly in that, in that mindset of giving that advice and guidance and helping people and entities to navigate certain issues and certain circumstances. So it's very similar, actually. But in terms of what I really enjoy doing, even though I've been an attorney for 20 years, I enjoy business so much more, because quite frankly, in business, you can have a much wider impact. Yes. In business, you can be an influencer on a national basis. As an attorney, your world is much more micro. Your world is much more basically your connections and who you know and who you shake hands with and word of mouth, which is all good, but typically it's in your own, locale or your own geographical region. I'm just more of a big picture thinker, and I like the fact that business allows one to really extend their influence on a much wider scope. Not to mention, I started my first business when I was 15 years old, so business is in my blood. I still do practice law to a smaller extent. I still do some real estate law and all of that, and I'm an active lawyer for the Missouri bar and the Illinois bar, as well as the federal courts. So of course, that's something that I would never relinquish. But the skill sets and the advocacy and the communication and just the analytical ability and being very discerning and the critical thinking skills that you garner as a lawyer really, really serves you well in business.
Yeah. Well, what I'm curious about is that when you're consulting with someone, do you sometimes slip on your legal hat rather than your consulting hat, or do they meld in pretty easily? Do they, congeal, or are they separate entities when you're discussing things with a client?
We just lost her for a second. If you guys want to keep going.
We just lost. George, are you still there? George?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. We just lost Elizabeth. Hold on a second.
Well,
all right, George. Why don't you fill in the gap? Okay. while we get
she'll be back in a minute.
Yeah.
She'll be back in a minute. One of the things that I find interesting, though, I think, is really women in leadership positions, and there's been a whole lot of conversation about that, and some terms have evolved over the years, and I think we've seen a lot of change at the corporate level, even at the government level, in terms of more opportunities for women to rise through the ladder of success for leadership positions. So I wanted to hopefully bring that out and have Elizabeth talk a little bit about how she feels about that, because that continues to be a topic of discussion that is out here in both the corporate and the academic world that I really find interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating. You never think of an attorney as a consultant, but they are consultants. Of course, when you go to them, they say, I have a problem. How do I solve this problem? Of course, from a legal end, not from a processing end or a production end or whatever. But really, the logic is the same. You use the same logic. You just have little different venues.
Yeah, and I think, that term consulting has really been, I think, overused for a long time. So now we're beginning to see evidence to where some people are trying not to use it because it has some negative connotations. However, I think you're absolutely right. I think from an attorney perspective, they really do consult. They know the law. They know, they're up and current on, how it is that a client will be affected, based on the law. So I would say from a population of, leaders in terms of, how they consult, I think you're absolutely right on that one.
Yeah, you would think that an attorney would almost take an adversarial point of view because that's what they're accustomed to. You have a guy who's suing another guy or a woman or whatever, or one entity suing another entity. So you're always playing this, good cop, bad cop type thing. And it must be some transition to go from there to be a consultant and say, look at the entire picture and don't come out with a win-lose proposition, but come in with a win-win proposition. That's got to be a big trick. And I think we have Elizabeth back on the phone, on the air,
yes,
George.
Yes, we got her back.
Yeah, we got her back. Okay.
Yes. I'm
okay.
Here. Can you hear me, Joe?
Yes. Did you hear what I just said, Elizabeth?
I did, and that's perfect, actually. I don't know how my connection got dropped, but all of a sudden the screen just went blank, but I dialed right back in, so I do apologize for that. But
most charming ladies hang up on me, so don't feel bad.
Thank you for being my proxy, because you did a great job, Joe. I mean, I heard the last 5 minutes of it. It's like, he's speaking my words, and you're so right. The one thing I wanted to mention is that we're also consulting, but I'm a certified mediator as well. And so I enjoy keeping people out of court. And I did that for actually 10 years, where I was trained as a mediator, and I would mediate cases. Sometimes that would take hours, sometimes it would take days, keeping people out of court. And I've mediated probably about close to a little over 300 cases.
Wow.
I think there were about 4 of those out of 300 cases that actually went to court. And that in itself is very gratifying, just keeping people out of court. And you just said, Joe, finding the win-win. That's what it's all about. It's identifying the value of each side and finding that common denominator. And sometimes that can be really tricky. Sometimes it can be very cryptic. It's very challenging. And it really pivots on the transparency and the honesty and just that whole process of getting each party to identify what is it they truly want. And many times, surprisingly, at the end of that process, you find out that they're both wanting the same thing and they're not adversarial at all.
Right.
But there were some irrelevant external factors that were influencing the equation that shouldn't have even been at the table to begin with. And so I really enjoy mediating, and that's something that's really serving me well in business.
Do you ever come up with the challenge of converting from someone who is saying we've got to win versus, one side's got to win to basically everyone's got to win, because it seems to be the antithesis of being an attorney. You know, we're going to sue this person, we're going to get X number of dollars, and they're going to lose X number of dollars. In the consulting world, everyone has to win to come up with a viable solution, or else everyone loses. I mean, and how do you make that transition? Do you ever have a problem with that?
No, not at all. And again, I think that reach back into the mediation mindset. And it wasn't that I was just certified and trained in being a mediator. I always had that mindset that, when you have a winner and a loser, and unfortunately the judicial process in our country is very, pivoted on a very adversarial process. And that's unfortunate. And there's a lot of wasted resources, we all know, a lot of wasted resources in terms of time and money and energy and stress and emotion that gets put into that adversarial process that forces a winner and forces a loser. And it's so unrealistic and it's so unhealthy. So that's why I just gravitated into mediation. And when our state opened the doors for attorneys to become certified mediators and to change their way of practicing, and really the law schools, and I took a lot of this in my law school, but a curriculum that teaches all about ADR, and which is called Alternative Dispute Resolution.
Oh, we lost her again, George. We don't know why.
Well, she'll have to reconnect.
Yeah.
But I really, one thing I really want to kind of have her talk about when she comes back, because I think I'm not connecting the dots, going from an attorney to healthcare. So I'm wondering, what it is that she loves about healthcare. What excites her about the whole healthcare industry that she is plunging into this new company that she's got.
Yeah. Well, I think we have her back. Elizabeth, are you back with us?
I am, but I don't know what's happening.
Many charming ladies, hang up on me. I'm used to it, so it doesn't bother me too much. But how is it that you selected healthcare as a focus in your practice?
That's a good answer. It's an easy answer for me, actually. And I've told Jorge this as well, but I wanted to be a doctor. And so back in 92, I was really looking hard at going into medical school. That was something that I was just, my aptitudes and my thinking, and I just gravitated towards the clinical side, towards healthcare was a very natural gravitation. So I started looking into the options and different avenues that I could take to go into a medical career. Even so far as to actually went back to college after I got two of my majors in business management and marketing, went back to college to take chemistry, a lot of chemistry classes. I'm sitting in class. So at any rate, for many reasons, it didn't turn out for me to go to medical school. I was, I had a small child, I was married, and it would have been just simply not doable or feasible or practical at the time, because it would have taken my family to another city that was 2 hours away, and it just didn't make any sense. So I then looked into physician's assistant, which is one step below doctor. Right. And at the time, the state of Missouri didn't recognize physician's assistant at all. They do now, but they didn't then. And so at the time, I was in shopping center management and marketing, and I was marketing a new strip center. Prior to that, I was marketing a shopping center, and started looking into law because I knew I kind of, hit my head on the ceiling and I couldn't go any further where I lived. I had all the best jobs there were where I was living, and wanted that intellectual challenge and applied to law school and went to law school instead. I don't regret it. I actually loved law school. Probably one of the few students that loved it. There were definitely some hard days, and it could be very arduous, as you could imagine, because we had to read about 125 pages every single night. But I loved the intellectual challenge, and I graduated cum laude, and wow, it served me very well. So that's kind of where that love of healthcare came in. Now I'm combining what I love to do, which is being an entrepreneur, seeing opportunities, creating businesses, creating systems, connecting dots, and looking at the executive level and putting pieces together. This is my fourth company. I must say it's my most challenging company. There's no doubt about that. But it's combining my natural gravitation and skill towards creating business with a lot of the skill sets and advocacy, communication skill sets, critical thinking, analytical thinking that I've garnered as a lawyer, and combining that with my original love for wanting to be a doctor. So it's just a perfect combination.
Well, it seems that you have all sorts of challenge. I'm sorry, George, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I really want to jump in here because she's just connected a bunch of dots, and I really want to sort of get some clarity on one thing. One of the things that I've exposed to is, the female executives who are continue to kind of bring up the topic of glass ceilings, sort of a way of systematic holding folks back, in this case, females, so they don't achieve higher levels of, success, for example. Now, I don't really sign off to that level of thinking because I believe that every glass ceiling is there to be broken. However, just listening to Elizabeth, it seems to me that you've broken through some glass ceilings. So what is the most single attribute that you would think as a successful entrepreneur should have? And what is that actually, what is the one that actually executes and creates a sustainable business?
Are you asking that of me or of Elizabeth?
Elizabeth.
Oh, okay. Very good. Elizabeth, did you hear the question?
I did, and I think I can answer it. Yes. George, thank you for that question. I'm going to try to be very responsive to your particular question, and let me just kind of reiterate the question. Is you asked a couple of questions. You said, what is the greatest attribute that contributes to a successful entrepreneur? But I think you put that in a context or within the framework of being a female. So I'm going to answer that. First of all, I think if you really take a broad brush profile, if you will, of entrepreneurs that are successful, because everybody has ideas and 98% of them never get executed. We all know that, right? It's interesting. I think it is confidence, and I think it's the love to learn. And I know that might sound a little unusual combination, but if you have this insatiable appetite to learn, which is fueled by a magic word called curiosity. Curiosity is an amazing component that I think is diluted today, especially in the younger generation. But if you start with that main core primordial ingredient of curiosity, that is an amazing force. And I don't know where you get it. I don't know if it's innate. I don't know if it's genetic. I don't know if it's external. You can't take it in a pill. But curiosity drives everything. It drives people. If you don't have curiosity, you're just going to be treading water, and you're going to be taking up space, is what I call it. Take up space. You eat, drink, breathe, you're taking up space. That's all you're doing. And so if you have that curiosity and you have that love to learn, then when you fail, you don't see that as failure. I don't even like the word. I mean, you're constantly going to be testing the waters, taking the temperatures, saying, okay, let's try this. That didn't work. Let's try this. That didn't work. I don't call that failure. That's learning. That's the whole process of learning. If everything succeeded that you
We lost her again, George. We don't know why. It just keeps on closing down. Get George, please, go on.
It doesn't matter. Let's just keep going with the conversation.
Yes.
So she'll come back in a minute.
Yeah.
I know there's people on the line that why don't you have them kind of ask me a question as to what they got on their mind.
Is there anyone on the line now? Okay, we have someone on the line, but they're not asking a question. So, but let me throw something out, something that I heard on an interview that had nothing to do with consulting or healthcare or being an attorney. And they asked the same question, why did you make it when so many else people failed? And I thought the answer was so simple but so erudite. He said, I had no plan B. And sometimes when you're placed in a position, and just like when the Europeans came over here not speaking English, came to our shores back in the turn of the century, 1900s, they had no plan B. Either they made a success, they obtained a skill, they worked day and night, or they died or starved to death, or whatever the case may be. And this person said, I had no plan B. He said, everyone that I know that has not made it in my business had a plan B. And as soon as things got tough, they reverted to plan B. And thus they were not a success. I had no choice. I just throw that out because that answer always stayed with me because it was so simple.
Yeah.
And
So I think that's pretty interesting, because what that tells me is that, they were either gonna make it or not, and it gave them sort of a mental focus to say all our energies are going to go into this thing, and we're going to succeed. I'm not sure, as a strategist, I always look at, more than one way of attaining, certain outcomes. And I can tell you that there's always, I would advise to have a plan B and a plan C in terms of different courses of action to take, because, the market, the industry, just business in general has changed, just because of the influence of technology and the way that, we're able to do more with a lot less. So that was interesting response. And anyway,
all right, we have a caller on the line. What area code is that?
We have her back, is what I said.
Oh, we have a back. Okay, we have a back. Okay, very good. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. There you are. You're back again.
I'm sorry.
There's also a caller on the line, so.
Yeah. Well, Elizabeth, pay your electric bill. It keeps on going off. This.
I get my Wi-Fi bill, Joe. That's what it is.
Oh, we also our caller hung up. I guess they waited too long. But now, what is the most surprising thing that you've learned going into healthcare? It seems that healthcare is a mess. I know my limited experience. My wife's an audiologist, and she's works with doctors all the time, and doctors are not amenable to taking advice. It seems, my experience. They have ways of doing things. They're not particularly. They can be nice guys, but not nice guys or women to work for. And they have preconceived notions on how things should work, regardless of how destructive they are. I think doctors have got to be the worst business people in the world. How do you interject what you're doing? How do you involve yourself in an environment with a population that generally doesn't? Doctors don't take advice; they give advice. I mean, it must be the toughest road to hoe has got to be this one here.
It is, Joe, and really you speak their language. If you speak a doctor's language, if you speak clinical, and then a lot of doctors are very weedy and they speak very clinical, and that's something that comes natural to me. In fact, I just had a conversation a couple of days ago, and it was with a doctor, and we were talking about the IgE markers and this allergy immunotherapy. And fortunately, I love the topic. Fortunately, I am always blowing holes in my own program, and that's the critical thinking in me. I'm not the Pollyanna, although I'm very optimistic, but I'm not the Pollyanna, and I want to go in there with fully armored. And I like to, and this is, again, I'm reaching back to my litigation days, but when you have a client and you have a weak link in your client, you take the sting out of it by bringing out that weak link before the opposing counsel does. And if you bring it out yourself, then that whole impact is going to be greatly diluted.
Yes.
And it's going to be much less damaging if you bring out the weak link yourself. Yeah. So that's what I do. That's what I do in business. If my particular program or service or whatever it is that I'm representing, I will bring out that, here's the cost. Here's the drawbacks. Here's the weak links. Here's the holes. Here's the things that, maybe aren't completely shored up. And then what you do is you get that comprehensive answer and a very clinical definition within context. And it's amazing how you can really gain their trust. You can get their attention, but you have to be quick. They don't have a lot of time. And I'm a very succinct kind of bottom line kind of person anyway. Yeah. So it's easy for me to speak their language. The challenge is that's just me. The challenge is creating a company and a sales force that can message that way. And it's that is really the challenge, Joe, more than anything. And the bigger challenge is, you're saying, well, how do you get the message because they are such personality? The biggest challenge is getting to that challenge when you can actually speak to them. That's the biggest challenge of all. That's 90% of the hurdle. How do you even get to them?
Right.
And the way the supply chain and the distribution channel has changed in healthcare over the last 7 years is like lightning speed, and it's gone through paradigm shifts. It's evolving very quickly. It's evolving for many reasons, and it's quickly evolving because of so many factors. One is technology. And everybody is more electronic. They want it right away. They're very remote, short clip, short attention span. The second thing is the doctors don't have the time to meet with that rep who's hauling in their little black suitcase on wheels that we always see the pictures of 20 years ago. Those days are almost gone. They don't have the time to meet with those folks. So you have to find a different way to message to them. They don't have the time for many reasons. A lot of times their patient load has doubled, especially if you're a pediatrician. They're having to spend at least 70% more time just being compliant.
We lost the line again. Geez. Okay, George, please.
Yeah. So Joe, there's a caller on the line, and I think they're trying to ask a question. Can you check on that one?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll try to bring them up if they're trying to ask a question. Hold on, just real quick.
Yeah, I wanted to ask her, George.
Caller is on the air.
Caller, you're on the air. Would you like to ask a question or make a comment, please?
Oh, yes, sir. How are you doing this afternoon?
Fine. Thank you for calling.
You're welcome. I've been listening for the past 25 or 30 minutes or so, and a lot of my questions have been answered. I have one last question I'd like to ask.
Yes.
Is Miss Kaiser back on yet, or?
Let's see.
I am.
Yes, she is.
Yes, she is. Here she's back.
Hi, good afternoon, Miss Kaiser. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. First and foremost, I want to say I'm very impressed with not only your resume per se, but your approach to the way you look at things. As I've been listening, the one thing I would like to ask, if you don't mind, what's the single greatest attribute of a successful entrepreneur, in your opinion?
I have to say one. Am I restricted just to one? One is hard.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to take a little free flow approach, if you don't mind. I think the most successful attribute as an entrepreneur is having fun with what you're doing, having fun and being insatiably curious. If you have those attributes, and I'm not even talking about intelligence, just forget about that. I'm talking about more of a personality. If you have those attributes, then what we call failures, which is just a word in my opinion, I think we need to come up with another word, isn't really failures at all. It's the process. It's a process of learning. It's a process of the joy of the challenge of figuring things out. It's like a Rubik's Cube and having fun in the process. You have to have fun in the journey. And if you don't, you're never going to make it. You're just going to be, having these pipe dreams and dreamers that most of us are without actually executing. And having the confidence of pulling the trigger and having faith in yourself and not waiting for perfection. That's a killer. And then that's one of my pet peeves. I have an aversion to people who are perfectionists. Oh, they drive me crazy. So many times, nobody's perfect. And it's, sometimes you just got to build the plane as you fly it. And you've got to have the confidence and enjoy building it as you fly it. And I think you have to have the enthusiasm and that fun that you're having in building a business for it to resonate and for it to be contagious to others, so they kind of want to join you and have fun with you.
That was very well said, and I love what you said, the word failure. I've always said to my people, you have to learn how to lose before you can win. And the example I use, which I think can resonate with our generation, a young man named Michael Jordan got cut by his high school basketball coach because he was not good enough. And after that, the rest was history. Yeah. But thank you so much for your time. It was very enlightening.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you, caller. Thank you for calling Executive Exchange Radio. Now, I'm still having this roadblock, Elizabeth. Do doctors call you, or do you call on them? And if you call on them, how do you attract their attention? It seems that they're virtually. I have a doctor that I've known for 32 years, a good friend of mine, and I can't stand seeing him anymore because he's so. And not because him personally, is because the practice is such. It's grown to such a point where he's inundated with. He has administrators telling him how to do things. Like he got fined, he told me, because he wrote out a prescription for someone, and he didn't put it on the computer, and they fined. I mean, the rules, regulations, and everything are killing the entire medical industry. How do you get to even speak to these doctors that need so much help, and if anything, need our sympathy?
Right. A couple of ways. My first answer is going to be kind of generic, and then I'm going to get into something that's a little bit more interesting and certainly enlightening. The first answer is you have to convey a message that you're going to provide an instant revenue generator that is non-disruptive, it is seamless with no upfront costs, and it's contingency based. They love to hear that because they don't have time to learn. They don't have time for the implementation. They don't have time to onboard. And they certainly don't want to have to add any further staff in order to accommodate to your brand new mousetrap. They're just not going to do that. They're already drowning, as you said, Joe, and well put. And that is their world. But the second way that we have found, and it's much more strategic. It's kind of much more subtle. And what we're doing is we're offering fractional CFO services to these physicians' practices that don't have a CFO. They certainly can't afford a CFO. They need a CFO. They know they need their CFO. They have, maybe their accountant in the books, or their wife doing the books, or their niece or nephew or husband or friend or relative, or, babysitter doing their books because they're just in the practice. And so what we offer is we offer a discounted fractional CFO service so that we can provide that CFO. Once that CFO then is in-housed into that practice, and that CFO then takes a look at their revenue, their cash flow, their balance statement. They see where the holes are. They see that they're losing, possibly not capturing 40% of their reimbursements that they should be capturing because they're doing the CPT codes all wrong because of the DC-10 that passed. And now you've got 68,000 codes. They see all these denials. They see these programs that are not taking advantage of. So if we can offer that service and an objective, critical fiscal component into their practice, the doctor will then refer to that fractional CFO. And the CFO then says, here's your holes in the dam. Here's your gaps. Here's where you're bleeding. And not only am I a consultant, I'm not just giving you lip service, but here's the programs that you need, and here's what we're going to do for you. Yeah. And then we come in. So that is another way that we can also get their attention by providing that advisory capacity with a CFO. That is a challenge too, but it is a very strategic way of circumventing all of those obstacles that you just identified. Which the main obstacle is lack of time. You heard of these. No-see bugs or no-see whatever. Now they call them no-see physicians because you can't see them. Right. Just no-see. They go from exam room to exam room.
Right, exactly.
Now, another way we capture their attention, they live on their iPhones. 87% of all doctors are Apple. They're not Droid. So knowing that, we are producing short clip videos. They may only have 20 seconds between exam 1-2 and exam 1-3. They may have 20 seconds and they get to eat a half of a Nutri-Grain bar. And I mean, that's their life. It literally is their life. Yeah. They look at their phone, and we are developing a digital marketing campaign for those short clips to go to their phone so they can see these innovative allergy immunotherapy programs, and they can really substantially increase their revenue and offer better practice of medicine. Our tagline is good business, good medicine. If it's not good business, we're not going to offer it. If it's not good medicine, we're not going to offer it. It's got to be both.
Do you wind up streamlining the organization and make it so it frees them up? Is that the number one problem? I know doctors are just very resistant to any sort of change because they're so busy.
Right, and that's a good point. The only programs and services that we will contract and onboard to our platform, Joe, are services that do not require any kind of adding staff, adding certain expertise or skill sets. If it requires a particular medical assistant, for example, or a physician's assistant, or a nurse practitioner, or a specialized tech, a med tech, we don't onboard them. It's got to be seamless. It's got to be non-disruptive. It's got to utilize the resources that the doctor already has. And if we have to put a person in there from our program, then we'll do it and we'll incur the cost. And it all pays for itself anyway with the way we monetize it.
I see. George, do you want to add some closing comments? We're past the witching hour, so I'd like you to add some closing comments, and before we return to Elizabeth.
Yeah, I really appreciate Elizabeth taking the time and appear on the show today. From my judgment, she's, I think, a perfect example of successful executive leader that also happens to be a woman. And there's a lot to be said for that particular attribute, because it's hard enough just being alive and trying to survive in this capitalist society. And she's able to have done this, and it continues to grow with a great attitude towards the future. What I like the most is the focus on the healthcare industry, which is in a way adding value to every one of us up here. And I think really hope that she can share some contact information so folks can go to her website and see what she does.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, Elizabeth, would you like to close things out, please?
I do, and I want to say something because I haven't addressed this. Being a woman, I don't feel like I've ever been discriminated against. I really don't. I've always had the attitude that I want to learn, and I'm genuine and sincere in the fact that I want to learn. I have asked other men to be my mentor when I litigated, when I was fresh out of law school. I've always, portrayed in a very genuine way, because I am genuine, that please teach me, be my mentor, give me guidance. I want to learn what you do, and you're exemplary in whatever that pursuit that I have. And people want to help. I've never really experienced some of the challenges and discrimination that some women have, and perhaps it's just because I don't have a chip on my shoulder to begin with, and maybe I don't have the plan B. Maybe I don't have that in my mind that, I'm going to be discriminated against because I'm a woman. It's not even there to begin with, and so maybe that just comes out. So I know I'm the minority, and I know that there might be other women listening thinking, that's interesting because that's not been my experience. But I've always gravitated towards, in the past, very male-dominated careers. I mean, an attorney and a business owner and all of that. And I've just not experienced that. In fact, when I was in law, I had to do domestic for a while because it's a rite of passage. And a lot of men wanted me as their advocate in court because they thought that they would get more of a favorable ruling by the judge with me being a woman. So I've experienced reverse discrimination in many respects.
Oh, great.
I really have. So at any rate, my contact information is Elizabeth Kaiser. And my last name, I just want to stress, it's not with an I, like the Kaiser Permanente in California, which is the largest healthcare system in the country, but it's with a Y. So it's Kayser. My contact information is ekaiser@kaiserhealth.com. So my domain is kaiserhealth.com. Ekaiser standing for Elizabeth Kaiser. My website is kaiserhealth.com. We kept it very simple. And the contact information is 314-402-1788. We have a Facebook under Kaiser Health, again with a Y, not an I. We have LinkedIn profile, we have Twitter, so we're into the social media, and we're really working on a brand of Kaiser.
Okay. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being on Executive Exchange Radio, and George, thank you very much for allowing me to be the moderator for today's program. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, George, for inviting me.
Right, a great program. You're a terrific person. You're really.
So sorry for the
you need a
drop-off.
cape now. You need a cape with a big S on it, Superwoman or something. You know.
Yeah, for calling back 3 times after I got cut off, right?
Okay.
Show you at least I was tenacious, right?
Right. That's right. George, would you have any closing words?
No, that's it. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for the calls. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. And folks, thank you very much. You've been listening to Executive Exchange Radio. I'm your moderator, Joe Cristiano. Remember to stay well and stay tuned.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks, George. Bye-bye.